Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Tiffany, a retired librarian turned homeschool mom. And in this video we're going to look at slightly corny, thoroughly admitted, but family film that I happen to enjoy no matter how slightly unrealistic it is. And so we're going to look at this film. This is Mr. Holland's Opus. So if you're unfamiliar with this film tells the story of Glenn Holland, who, trying to think, in the 50s, he's basically, I think, doing a jazz band. I don't think it never really specifies. But essentially, he's forced to take up teaching. He had done a teaching degree in the past as a backup, and now he's forced to teach at this high school. And in the beginning, he absolutely, utterly hates it. He's miserable. He's pretty much doing the bare minimum and being a horrible teacher and screaming and yelling and not really teaching anything. And essentially, he's trying to get out of there as quickly as possible. He absolutely, utterly hates it. And he not only is he's teaching music appreciation, he's also teaching their band, the typical school band. And one day he's talking to his wife because he's married. I'm not sure if she's pregnant at this point. She might be. But he's talking about how he used to go into a record store, and this guy at the record store kept trying to get him to listen to a man by the name of Coltrane. And eventually he listened to it and he enjoyed it. And this kind of sparks something in his mind. He goes back to the school, back to his class, basically had a conversation with his students. It's like, you pretty much, after they did a test, like, nobody knew what anything else was except for the one brown-nosing kid. And he finds his skill of teaching. And he actually shows them that they actually do know the music, but using rock and roll. Now, this is the 1950s. Probably around the mid-1950s, I think, is when this starts. So rock and roll is still considered by a lot of the parents the music of the devil and evil. So he gets brought in front of the vice principal. I believe his first name is Gene. He shows up, and the principal. And basically, it's like, how can you be teaching this when it's the music of the devil? You should be teaching the classics. And I think one of the lines, one of the vice principal brings up, I think Tchaikovsky, possibly wrong, and he's like, that's the music of the Russian Revolution, if you want to talk about like a breakdown in morality. And the principal's like, what do I tell parents? And he's like, tell them I will teach anything from Beethoven to the Beatles if I can teach a kid to love music. That's essentially the conversation. So he has this spark and he becomes a fantastic teacher. And in the 50s, he goes through different decades. So in this decade, he's actually trying to help a young girl by the name of Gertrude Lang how to better play the flute in the band. And this is one of the scenes that I love, is she had basically left her instrument at the end of one of the classes, and she basically tells him, it's like, I'm giving it up. And he says, it's like, we've been focusing basically just on the music, on the notes on the page. And she's like, what else is there to learn? He's like, there's a lot more to music than notes on the page. And then he plays Wild Thing. And he's like, they have no rhythm. They're playing the same notes over and over again, but I love it. And he asks her, it's like, does she love it? So he's like, yeah. And he's like, why? Because it's fun. And he's like, music is supposed to be fun. And he gets her to have her passion and realize she needs to trust herself, that she knows the notes on the page. She just needs to trust herself to play it. And yes, this is important. She comes back later. So then it skips to the vice principal and the principal are basically, they're pulling him into, this is moving into the 60s, because the Vietnam War happens right after this. So, but the school is trying to do a marching band, and they have and he's desperately trying to teach them how to march, and he doesn't because he wasn't in the military, so he has no idea to teach his kids how to march. And he's friends with the football coach, and the football coach says, "I'll make a deal with you. I have this kid who's failing, and he can't play. The principal will not let him play. He's a senior. He's basically the PE coach. He's not just he teaches wrestling. He does wrestling as well. So he's the sports coach. And the coach has already lost this guy to like the varsity wrestling team because he's failing classes. And he says, I will teach your kids to march if you will get this kid in your marching band and teach him how to play anything. And I can convince the principal to give him an academic credit for this." So you see him struggling to teach this black kid rhythm. Basically, he's trying to teach him the drums. And he does. And this kid eventually, now he doesn't actually come back, he's mentioned again. But he works really hard to finally learn how to do this and to graduate. And then he's sent to Vietnam, where he dies. And that's brought up in the next person he helps. So he's teaching a music. This is moved into, I think, the late 60s, 70s. So he's trying to deal with this kid who's in his music appreciation class, and basically he's coming to class stoned incessantly. And despite the fact that he's still technically doing well in the class because he knows everything, Holland's getting pissed off because it's like, you're coming to my class stoned, and this is music appreciation. You're supposed to be appreciating music, not being stoned. So he's basically yelling at him one day, and one of the student aides comes in and hands him a letter from the principal. Well, this kid, Lou Russ, the one he'd been teaching how to play the drums, who'd been sent to Vietnam, has died. And basically this is when his funeral is going to be. You're being invited because you were a major part of his life. And I'm assuming the parents knew that because he helped him graduate. So he looks at this kid and says, "Dress nice and meet me here." And he drags him to this funeral and makes him stand there and listen to this funeral. And he's basically, it's like, who is he? Who is this kid? He's like, he's just a kid I taught to play the drums. He won the football, or no, I think he had been kicked out of being able to play football, and he was about to be lost for wrestling. So he'd run the wrestling finals like 3 years running. And it's like he had to work. He wasn't as smart as you were. He had to work really hard just to graduate. So it's like a wake-up moment to this kid. It's like, look, you have it easy. Please pay attention, because not everybody does. And then after the kid leaves and the funeral's over, he walks over to the principal, or not the principal, the coach, who's his friend. And the coach says, like, we know too many of these kids, because they know a lot of the kids who are dying in Vietnam. Now, going on throughout this, he has a son, Cole. And him and his wife, I think eventually he teaches badly driver's ed over the summer in order to be able to buy a house. So, because the teacher's salary, his wife, I don't think, is working. And it turns out his son, Coltrane, is deaf. And he's having his own trouble connecting with his son. So that's the next thing that he goes through. His son's very scientific. He's very into the science fair. He's in a special school. They moved him to a special school. They have a whole bunch of issues. You have a music teacher whose son is deaf, so they have a lot of trouble connecting. And his father doesn't fully he never fully learned to sign. He knows how to an extent, but he becomes very, very disconnected to his son, and to an extent his wife, because they fight a lot about it. And he's become too committed to his job and not committed to his own kid. Now, Cole has reached middle school age around this time, and this is getting close to the 1980s. In fact, it is around 1980, because John Lennon dies, and him and his son, who's working on his father's old car, very into science, very into mechanics. very smart kid. And Lennon dies, and him and his son have a huge fight about music. And his father realizes he has a horrible relationship to his son, and his wife tells him it's like he thinks you love your students more than you love him. So that happens. And I'm trying to think what order this happens, because the other kid he helps in the school is a young girl named Rowena Morgan. And at this point, the school is starting to lose money. This is getting into the 80s. This is right before they start cutting music programs like crazy in the public schools. And this girl, they're setting, basically they don't really have a budget for the senior musical, so they decide to do this collection of Grisham songs. Not quite sure what this is. The football coach agrees to teach the football players how to dance, which apparently he takes seriously because he took modern dance in college because their coach wanted them to do it to basically learn balance and movement, which kind of makes a little bit of sense. So he minored in modern dance. So he actually, yes, teaches the football players coordination and how to dance. But this young woman is a waitress. She's kind of lower class, but she has an absolutely utterly beautiful voice. So they don't have an affair, but she certainly wants to. So, and he thinks about it to an extent, because again, he's become distant from his wife and distant from his son. So he's not as connected to his family. She has a beautiful voice. She comes to him and tells him that after the last performance, I think even before she graduates, she's leaving. She's going to New York. She's like, if I do not do this now, I will never leave. I will be stuck here. She's like, I'm not telling anybody. Like at the final cast party, I'm going to say goodbye to my friends by not tell them and leave. And she's like, come with me. So, and at this point, his wife, being there opening night, sees her name. She also noticed that her husband had been writing a song called Rowena's Verse, and she realizes, I may lose him. But what he does is he goes to the bus station, and she says, you're traveling light. He's like, I'm not coming with you. And he hands her a piece of paper. He's like, I contacted a friend of mine in New York. Him and his wife are expecting you. You can go stay with them. So that's what he does for her. He sends her someplace safe when she's going to New York. And then he goes home to his wife and kid. And then I think this is the last thing, where he goes to the deaf school and asks them how he can make music accessible to the deaf. And they're like, lights and vibrations and things, and sign language. So that's what he does in order to reach his son, because he realizes he needs to have this relationship with his kid. This is his child, this is his family, and he recommits to his now, I think he's getting into high school. So he does this thing, and he sets it up with the school band to play for the deaf kids and his own son, showing that, yes, we can, this big fight he had about Lennon, his son Cole said, it's like, you don't think I understand what you love, that I don't care know anything about music, because he brushed his son off when John Lennon died, because his father was very, very depressed, because this was a big deal. And so he reaches out to his kid, and they fix their relationship. Now, previously, the old principal had left. She'd retired, I think, after Lou Russ graduated. But the 90s have hit, and budget cuts have hit, and he gets called into the former vice principal, now the principals, and basically he's told, we're shutting down the music program. You're basically being pushed into retirement. He's 60 at this point. So, and he's like, I can write you a good recommendation. He's like, write me a recommendation to where? The morgue? Like, I'm 16 years old, Glenn. I got nothing left. And he devoted his life to this. So he thinks he's being thrown away. So, and what happens is, behind the scenes, and yes, this is extremely unrealistic. I'm very much aware of this, that this is unrealistic. But he's packing up his stuff, and the PE coach comes, and he's like, I wish I could retire. And Holland's like, I'm not retiring, I'm being dumped. Like, I gave my life to something, and I thought it meant something, and come to find out, no, it doesn't. So, coach leaves. His son, who's now a full-grown man, he's a teacher himself. He's a science teacher. So, he's pretty much fixed up his father's own car, and he does speak a little bit. So, even though he's deaf, he has learned to actually physically speak, though he does sign, as does both parents at this point. Both of them are fluent in sign. So him and his son and mother come, and they're helping his father leave because he's packing up his stuff, and school's over. And they're walking down through the school, and him and his wife hear music. And it's like, what the heck is going on? So they go into the auditorium, big sign, farewell, Mr. Holland, or goodbye. I can't remember what the heck it is. And basically, they had this huge thing where he shows up. It's like his wife goes up on stage. It's like, the master of ceremonies might be running late, but she's like, when I told the community that my husband was retiring, she's like, I've never seen such an outpouring. And then Gertrude Lang shows up. She's the governor. So this girl that he taught to play the flute is the governor. And she shows up and basically has this big speech. It's like, this is my teacher who basically turned out he was trying to write the symphony, that he was going to be rich and famous. It's like, he's not rich and he's not famous, at least not outside our little town. And basically tells him that, are you blind? You've touched so many people. Everybody in this room, you've touched. And then they play his symphony for him. Now, yes, it's corny. Yes, but it's a feel-good family movie. And no, it's not possible for them to actually be able to do that. Gathering a whole bunch of alumni, the governor, to be able to learn a piece of music and play together would take hours that most of these people did not have to do that. But that is the end of this movie. It is very family friendly. It is very fun. It's a good look at a man's journey as he goes through, this starts in the 50s, it goes into the 90s. Decades of a career that he learns to love, and how he uses music to help people and inspire people and inspire his community, and then eventually inspire his own child. So it's a good feel-good family film. I know it's not realistic, and yes, it's kind of corny, and I know a lot of people, particularly my age, watched it in their music appreciation classes, which, yes, I took one in 8th grade, but I actually enjoyed it, and I know a lot of people couldn't stand it. I like history, and the history of music is interesting. So, but I know one girl that I knew that was in band. I met her later. She was much younger than me. When we worked together, that her band teacher would not let them see this movie, because it's like, no, do not watch this. He didn't like it. Because yes, it's musically unrealistic in some cases. But I don't think that's the point. Music is the backdrop to this man's life. And it's kind of the story of his career and his love of teaching. And I originally, when I first saw this, I wanted to be a teacher. I planned to go to school to become a high school history teacher. I decided that when I was about 17, when I realized I could not do the math to go into something like marine biology and the sciences, and I was pushed away at that because I had crappy math teachers and I did not learn well in a school setting. That's the reason I'm choosing to homeschool my kid, among many other reasons. But I wanted to teach, and I wanted to teach history. And I went into my community college classes, and even my first couple of semesters of at the university to become a history teacher. But I ended up with just a history degree for various reasons, and I don't regret it because the school I was going to has a horrible reputation for turning out secondary education teachers. But I love teaching, and I was a Peace Corps volunteer. I taught badly because I was inexperienced and badly trained for various reasons. And I was very, very bad at it. And I had no control, and I was this 25, between the ages of 25 and 27, very shy, very unassuming, had no confidence whatsoever, and was very, very bad at it. Thoroughly admit it, was very, very bad at it. But then I went into library science because I was able to teach a variety of different subjects. And then I left that when I chose to become a mom, which now I get to become my kid's teacher, which is something I can't really wait to do, though she's almost 2. In fact, as the shooting of this video, she is 23 months old. And it's shocking because my baby is getting very, very big. So she's getting very, very big. And we're already learning a lot. She loves to read. But I will definitely show her this film. I mean, there's a reason I own it. It's because it's a feel-good movie. It's one of those great family films that you can put in that's enjoyable. Yeah, it's slightly unrealistic music-wise, but I like Richard Dreyfuss. I mean, he's good in this film, I think. Who else is in here? Olympia Dukakis, who's another well-known actress, plays the principal. And then his wife is Glenn Headley. So, and then who on earth is the other famous actor who plays the vice principal here? His wife went to prison. She was part of the whole college scandal thing. Telling me who the heck it is? No, it is. He's a brilliant actor. His wife's an absolute utter moron. Let's see if I can find his name here. And it's not looking on the back here. Here, I'll turn this down so I can. Yeah, let's see. Cannot remember his name. In fact, I'm going to go pull it up really quick because I know it. The moment I put in the IMDb page, it's going to pop up. Let me put in Mr. Holland's Opus. Yes, 1995. And where is my main? William H. Macy. That's the vice principal. So it's William H. Macy. So he does it very well. He's the guy who fires Mr. Holland at the end. So, I mean, again, this is a great movie, brilliantly acted, and very fun, and very, very family friendly. I mean, it's a little it came out in like 93 or something. 95. So yeah. Showing my age here. This is a 90s movie. But it's very fun, and it's very good. It's very uplifting. It's one of those movies that you throw in when you're not feeling great and you want to smile. And sometimes that's something that you would throw in. It's like you guys are having, particularly homeschool parents, it's been a rough week or something. You just want to sit down and watch something that makes you feel good. It's a feel-good movie. It's one of those. And I love it. It's one of my favorites. That's one of the reasons I bought it. Before I left for the Peace Corps, this was one of the films I think I brought with me to pass the time sometimes. And it's a feel-good movie. Yeah, it's a little corny. Yeah, it's slightly unrealistic, particularly music-wise. But again, not the point. Music is the backdrop to this, and it's more about this man's career and his love of teaching. So, and his learning to bond with his students and his family and his community, and how a simple music teacher can have an effect on a small town. Because the school that he teaches at, it's just brand new when he starts there. It's literally the first year the school has opened. That's what the impression you get because it's still being put together. So, and I think it's called John F. Kennedy High School. I'm sure there are dozens of them everywhere. So this is a feel-good movie. So that's it for this review. If you like this review, I have quite a few film reviews, children's book reviews. There's some sprinkling of some homeschooling videos here, some kids travel stuff, along with a bunch of other stuff. This is September. I'm starting Harry Potter. I'm doing Tamora Pierce, the Circle of Magic Quartet. I'm doing a couple other feel-good kind of fun films before I get into a whole lot of Halloween-y. and finishing Harry Potter. Halloween is packed. I'm probably doing about 5 videos a week next month. So from classic Dracula to Bunnicula to, and then some various fun, like Hocus Pocus film, before heading into some more of the heavy stuff in Native American history and Native American children's books in November, and then fun stuff, back to fun stuff in December, and then food stuff coming in January. And I've done a bunch of other stuff. So if you would like what you see, like and subscribe and check out what I've got. Thank you.